Hello, good morning, afternoon, or evening from wherever in the world you're joining us from. I'm joining from Barcelona. I am Sevi, and for those who don't know me, I am the partnership and project manager at Unlock. I am also an international producer and creative director. I work with music and film festivals around the world. And today I am delighted to welcome you in another episode of our series Queer Leadership 101. As Neil mentioned in the chat box, you can definitely introduce yourself. And along the way, if you have any questions for us, please also pop them in the chat box. We are very interested. So today in the series, we are welcoming Sandra Ljubinkovic, recently awarded Queer Leader at the We Create Space Awards in the category Community and Grassroots Activism. And before I give you some context to our programs and Unlock, and before we talk about what it even means to be a leader and what leadership means for Sandra and maybe for you, Sandra, would you like to give us a bit of insight to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. This is fun. We were just talking about like how when two of us are speaking, just regardless of podcast or not, like it's just more spontaneous and it's very fiery. So thank you for having me here. So I wear many hats, and then at the end it's just all one big hat. And I'm a somatic therapist and trauma therapist and a healer and a movement facilitator, and I really spend a lot of time as a free radical facilitating, holding, creating, and co-creating spaces for healing, for listening, for growing, for connection. In short.
In short,
In short.
thank you.
Yeah,
I think we will get more into
yeah,
that and into
yeah.
everything in just a minute. So,
Mm.
before we jump into it, let me introduce for those who don't know what Unlock is. So, it's a queer leadership network and a platform for visionary leaders. But not only, we run programs and courses to support people in their personal and professional development. With Unlock, wherever you are in your professional career, or you can find tools and resources in our network, so also people to support you on your journey, and of course for you to support others on their journey. This series is absolutely meant for everyone. You have here on the slide a little bit of the things that we do at Unlock, and I guess we will talk a little bit more about it during the conversation with Sandra anyway. Um, so, yeah, I was going to say, about that leadership network, that I believe leadership starts by knowing ourselves. So I was going to ask you, Sandra, what makes you a queer leader? First of all, do you even agree with that title? And was there a definitive moment where you realized you were one?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about like how sometimes this makes people very uncomfortable. Are you a leader? Which is the same. I work with healers, and people are like, I would never call myself a healer. So I feel it's very similar. It's very similar, like with the leadership. So for me, I think I always had been one. I think it's like I have been one mischief, that we're breaking the kids from the kindergarten and having the whole kindergarten at my house. So it's like, I think there is all, I mean, I was a leader long before I ever used that as a word, right? Like, and especially a queer leader, right? Like, I think my queerness taught me how to question norms, how to reinvent myself and what doesn't fit in my life, and also how to build spaces that feel like home for me, so that my moment of recognition was also very early in my queerness, when I was just like coming out as a young queer, where someone told me, your visibility made my world feel bigger.
Hmm.
And for me, it was like, well, I thought I was always visible, so, and including also this queerness, right? So, and somehow for me, that reminded me that leadership is not only and always just directing others. It is sometimes just existing with enough groundedness and authenticity that then others feel the permission to do the same. To step into their own power, to step into their vulnerability, to step into their own queerness.
Mm.
And I think that that's really the day I realized that my queerness was the source of my leadership. It was not an obstacle.
Mhm.
How
Yeah.
about you, Sevi? When did you figure that out?
I love that you said something about to question the norm because I feel that's all I'm doing. But
Yeah.
I never thought before. Yeah, I'm going to be very honest with you here. I think I never thought before coming to work with Recreate Space and Unlock and founding Unlock with Alex and Michael that actually I was one, and that challenging the statu quo and challenging the norm and questioning things and being visible out there and could contribute in making me a queer leader.
Yeah.
I never realized that it started within,
Yeah.
and so it prompts my next question because to be honest, I was not always comfortable with the title queer leader,
Mm.
but now I understand it fully, and I'm happy to own that leadership or that my own leadership, and we'll go in greater depth a bit later. But so I wanted to ask you about, you said something about questioning the norm being
Mhm.
like being part of this. So I was going to ask you, how does someone know, or do you think someone know if they are a queer leader?
Yeah. I I love that question, right? Like, so moving into the leadership, queer or feminist or however, all kinds of other leaderships, that we love and appreciate and are part of different movements and stuff. I just think like stepping into this authenticity is actually becomes one when we actually move through our shadows, and fears of actually stepping into that, what feel true to us. But many times in my experience, yeah, like working with people, facilitating the movements, yeah, is that the fears of loss, of humiliation, of alienation, of being outcast, of not belonging, and fear of persecution, this has a deep layer, yeah, that prevents us to live our inner truth, right? So really by tapping into those, yeah, by really like asking ourselves, really, what is the part of me I'm not seeing? What is the part of me that feels the furthest from me, from the present where I am? Because very often, also, working in somatics and working with somatics with people, right, including body into like that has to be the part of our leadership, right? So then we know when everything in ourselves aligns, when there is no dissonance, and even if there is a dissonance and even if there is contradiction, we will be able to hold that within our bodies and nervous system and not get hijacked by that, right? And for me, the more I was becoming, yeah, I'm still becoming. I'm forever work in progress, I think, but I'm noticing as I'm aging, as I'm moving, yeah, as I'm moving through different transitions in life, that I'm also noticing how my becoming and my presence shifts the room, yeah, not by force, but by resonance.
Mhm.
If when I'm in the room, when people are feeling safer or braver or more imaginative, because I just showed up as myself, yeah, not as a facilitator, not as a leader, not particularly any kind of other hat, right? But I think like if we are showing up in our own um, in our own authenticity and building the possibility where we can build a possibility where people once saw the limitation because this identity is too small or too narrow, or the box, whatever the box we were living in, is too small. And I think like when our lived experience can be the light or a lantern for some others, I think that that's really something, that's how you know. I mean, you just know,
Yeah.
if people finally breathe out around you, those who were living on one breath because of whatever intersectional identities they're holding, and when they finally breathe out from me, that is like, I got you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's
Mhm.
beautiful. You're right. I guess so. So based on what you said something about like being braver and showing up, and
Mm,
I think it was Alok that said that leadership started with authenticity because
mm,
showing up as ourselves is already the foundation of it all, and
yeah,
certainly of leadership. Um, and so, do you know when you found that leader? I can read that leadership style through what you said. So do you know when you found it, sort of, or you identify what it was? And could you describe it in three, four words, or in a few words, what your
yeah,
style of leadership is, based on what you
yeah.
almost already answered the question, to be
I
honest.
mean, but I think it's like actually, I really think like I was learning, I think my whole life I was learning through trial and error. Yeah, it was
Wow.
not easy. I didn't grow up having a mentor. I didn't having a lesbian or a queer mentor or whatever that I could just like kind of learn how to, right? Like so there was a lot of trial and error and a lot of through feedback, through reflection, through doing my own work, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I also noticed wherever I was holding the space or leading from compassion and groundedness. Yeah. So, and this is only my own sense of it, right? It's like we all experience it differently in our own nervous systems, right? But only then I had the more courage to challenge the systems, to challenge the norms and the patterns, that need shaking. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, really, was something finding what's working for me, trusting my instincts. Yeah. So I would say that my style, if you like, but anyway, I love these words, but like I'm disruptive. I can also my energy can be just disruptive, but not because I'm doing something on throwing tantrums. It just is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Grounded and compassionate. I think like this is also what I intentionally am bringing into different spaces.
Yeah, yeah, I can read that into you. I know you also, for the few times we met, whether it was in person or online, I can tell you you're also very encouraging of others, showing their colors or flying their colors, whatever those may be. You're always um, nurturing that authenticity in others, like everywhere I've seen you. So I think
Yeah.
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 But
Tell
yeah, you're
me,
right.
how did you discover your style?
I yeah,
How did you discover your style?
it's
Give me,
actually
give me
really
the
well.
gist.
I
Yeah.
think I said recently, I've known that forever, but I feel weird saying it out loud. But actually, it's true. I feel my superpower is definitely kindness. I feel I have not always been evolving in a world where kindness was even uh,
Yeah.
something, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people in teams or together or when they gather together are willingly unkind. That's definitely not a thing. But
Yeah.
being conscious of that kindness and the
Huh.
need of that kindness to start bringing ideas or listening.
Yeah.
All this I learned the hard way. I started my life, my work life in another country in United States, and I couldn't speak a word of English. I still can't, but I'm better.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So not my first language, so we are good.
Right? So you know what I mean. So it was like I had no other option but listen. And whatever I could grasp was not specifically the meaning of every word, but by hearing people's tone and I could understand what they meant. And sometimes it wasn't what they said,
Yeah.
but I could read into those emotions or
Yes.
um, you know, any type of feeling. And I think it helped me a great deal to
Yeah.
pause and listen
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of preparing an answer or whatever, or going to confrontation or conflict or arguing. I was always trying to understand with empathy, like you said earlier, what's going on there, what are we going to do with that.
That's a great
So
quality. That's a great quality. And I think that that's
right,
that's the currency of the future, if you ask me.
yeah, I believe so.
Mm.
um, So yeah, anyway, so that's my style, if that's a style.
I
Um,
love it. Thank you for sharing your style. I love this.
and
Mm.
I was gonna say it's not without challenges, and that brings me to the next question. Is there a challenge that you're currently facing in relation to your own development that you're willing to share with us now?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I think about this question a lot, right? Like, so what is it? What will be a challenge? Yeah. I'm just thinking like recently I have found a mentor, right? Like recently I found a mentor and I have been using the language like that, and I feel challenged here and this is not clear and and then we have it just unpacking what that all means actually for me. And it's like, yeah, it's like, this capitalist world, we always have to have our shit together. We always have to be clear. Somehow there is a clarity in that. And then somehow we have to solve the challenge, right? Like there is, it's not even the hero's journey, right? Like it's more like there is something. And for me, is like, I turn it around and it is like, what are you practicing? Yeah. So it's not a challenge. So what is it that you're practicing every day? Yeah. Like so that you can grow. Yeah. And it's not about like here is the challenge. There is a learning obstacle or there is something, that is like some people are annoying me in wherever I am in whatever context, right? But I think like, what is the fine line and what am I practicing in order to be able to walk this fine line? Because
Yeah.
sometimes it's not a problem to solve. It is maybe just the dilemma to hold,
Mm,
right? Like what we like every little thing can feel like a challenge, right? And that also tells me a little bit like, okay, how we are inside of our nervous system, right? Like if every little thing is a challenge, right? Like so there is a very little room then that we can navigate, and maybe even space where we can practice some other ways of responding to whatever is challenging, right?
mm,
So I'd rather think like, yes, like what I am practicing. I think I'm a practitioner for life, of meditation, of rest, of being quiet, also, slowly building it as a skill, not even, as a muscle, but really like how to expand it without overextending. Yeah,
mhm.
because this world will ask always more and more of us, yeah, or the community or the family or whatever it is, yeah. There will be, and I want to do that, but I also want to be paying attention. Is like, okay, so how I can be anchored within me, and that's a practice, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what I am intentional practice. How I can be anchored so I'm not overextending. So then there is a less of me that I can offer. Yeah.
Mm,
So it's a depth here. So that's what I want to be practicing. Yeah. Not being stretched too thin, that then I'm losing depth, that I'm losing this dimension.
yeah.
So like that.
Yeah, that's so
Mm,
interesting. And you're right. I think we can find this resolution, and sometimes not the resolution, but at least
mm,
some peace of mind or some
yeah.
more relaxing time when we pause or when we take in
Yeah.
consideration some
Mm,
repeated practice that we can
yeah.
find for ourselves, not to navigate those challenges.
Yeah.
So to you out there who's actually joined today to listen, if you want to share that with us, like what is one of the practice you have,
Mm,
if or if you don't know yet, if you want to think about it, because I
yeah.
think it's so useful. It sounds like a simple trick or a small
Yeah.
tips, but it's actually huge.
Yeah,
Me,
but
it's
it's a different thing
breathing.
it's a different thing for different people, right?
Yes,
Like, and I
exactly.
love
So,
this, right? Like, so for me, it's like I have an hour in the morning just by myself drinking coffee, like whatever. I would say I don't have a ritual, but obviously I do because this is my 1 hour, right? In
yeah.
quiet or reading, having long showers, sometimes in the middle of the day, yeah, a warm, long showers, going and also I'm following my energy, and this is also I'm intentional to follow that, not go over it. So for example, that at least once or twice, and in the best cases sometimes even more times when the weather allows, when it's not so crappy and rainy, that I can just be in the nature. I can be in the park, I can walk, and walk without headphones, not like hearing different sounds, right? Like the birds, the nature, so for me is that stimulating and resting in different senses, right? Like far away from cars, from highways, like, like kind of less noise. Also, just like having unscheduled time to do nothing. Yeah, but because there is always something, I can always distract myself with something. Yeah, but also with this, like really sensing what is it like, what is happening, and on the level, and it is just like what's my mental landscape, what's my emotional landscape, what's my body saying right now. Because very often, can happen if I'm not listening, that I'm in a dissonance. It can be that like
Mhm.
my, my watch is telling me like you're gonna get a heart attack because your heart is like going, and I'm like, I'm super zen, like in the head, it's like nothing is happening. I'm like, not, but something else is happening, right? So like that, right? So that I think like that is my practice, and people have a very creative, and like what I also call practice is sometimes these things that feel so normal to you that you don't even see
Yeah.
the practice, but somehow it helps you sustain. So whether it's 15 minutes before the whole house wakes up, or whatever it is, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So little things like that, yeah, that actually, and finding more of those during the day.
Yeah.
Deb Dana, who works with an obsession, who she calls it glimmers, finding these little moments during the day that energizes, that give us, that kind of recharges. So it can be, oh, the warmth of the sun of my face, through the window. It can be very little things like that. And I love that, like I have plenty of glimmers during the day. It can
Yeah.
be, I look around, oh, a pink cushion. It can be, anything, right? This is
No,
like,
that's great.
boom, it
And
changes, it shifts my energy, it shifts my direction. Sometimes you're just like calling a friend, and I'm like, tell me what's up. Or I got something to tell you, which I didn't figure out what was it the days before, but then now I know it. So then it opens up a different space within me. So
yeah,
any of those things,
any
and
of those
even if
things.
you're introvert, you find your own ways of like, just like, okay, what is it that I'm not always staying in my comfort zone, but then like, what if I reach out? What if I say something?
Yeah.
You
But that's
know?
brilliant because you started by actually mentioning something that would actually take care of your well-being and your own mental health before you went on to asking other for support. So it's like really
Yeah.
like pause and reflect, or pause and breathe, and then why not
Yeah.
reach out, which is
Mm.
like, I think it's a really good, and it's also of course linked to what you do
Yeah.
and your
Yeah.
work for sure, but it's great, and I think it's great insight. So
Mm.
talking about your work, what are you most proud of when it comes to your work, or most passionate about? Which part, or everything?
Everything. Yeah. Everything
Everything.
about yeah, people. Yeah. I'm most passionate, I think, about people. I
Yeah.
think I'm very proud of those moments when people tell me that they feel seen and safe, or safe enough. And that, also passionate about creating spaces where people can reclaim their voice, their bodies, and especially those who were taught to shrink, to apologize, to blend
Yeah.
in. Right? I
All
think
right.
there is nothing more powerful, and I feel so privileged also witnessing and watching people step into their own truth and authenticity, not only for the first time, but showing up over and over and over again. I think that is really something, I wouldn't say proud, but it's a huge privilege to be able to serve this way.
Yeah.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, and there's a lot about service, and that notion to serve others,
yeah,
and
yeah.
ultimately ourselves in leadership. So I think it's
Yeah. And I think when we finally that, that like that is all what we are doing is in service of, whatever better world,
yeah,
different, changing the circumstances, that everybody has an equal access. But in order to that, we really have to do our homework for that, right? Like
yeah,
really, and how do we create space within us so we can then become one of those people who can hold the world together with love.
yeah. So we ask you to choose three practical takeaways. So I know I'm like you've already give us a few, but three practical takeaways for our audience under the unlock pillars of well-being, inclusion,
Yeah.
and leadership. And
Yeah.
so you had like a little document. And so, what
Yeah.
are these? If you chose them, what are these?
Yeah. I mean, I think there like many, I mean, anything that is in your document and in there, like, yes, 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 to all of it, right? Like, so basically, but for me, there is something around the practice of radical listening. Yeah, really listening to understand. And I think for me, I found that that's a foundation in every safe space. Yeah. So not just listening to respond, but radical listening. And that's a practice. Yeah. Speaking of practices. So I think like
Mm,
this is one of the things. Yeah. Like on your inclusion bucket, right? On a well-being bucket, and I think that that is also a big loaded word that also needs a lot of unpacking, but I think that treating rest as a responsibility, not a reward. Yeah, so I think that that's no one can serve to anyone, and including yourself, from the place of tiredness and depletion. So I think that that is resting and learning and practicing how to do that is being self-responsible. Yeah, not a luxury, not a reward, not all other things we are socialized into, right? And I think that from the leadership bucket is really leading from your values and not from fear. And I think that sometimes that gets like all like a big bundle, right? And I think that anything that we feel is, how we lead or how we are navigating the spaces or how we move through the spaces, whether we use the word leadership or not, right? But like if that aligns, if there is this inner alignment, yeah, with your values, with your principles, with how you talk, how you behave, how you are in your relationships. I think that becomes like very, very meaningful. Yeah. Hmm. I cannot hear you, Sevi. You muted. Yeah,
Handy.
gotcha.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
So it's almost time to wrap up, but before we do, I wanted to ask you, what is the biggest lesson you've learned along the way, that you'd like to share? And maybe we can make them as words of wisdom or like a takeaway for the audience here or for today's attendees. And what do you think?
That yeah, words of wisdom. I don't, when somebody asks me for a wisdom, I'm like, I got none. But you know, I think like you don't have to be extraordinary to make any difference. You just have to be authentic. Yeah. And I think that the world changes when, you choose connection over isolation, when you choose courage over convenience, or because somebody said so, or because your inner voice said so, right? So, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that exactly all of our stories, all of the queer leaders, all of the other leaders, exactly as we are, all our stories exactly as they are, they have the power to guide someone else's home, And I think that that's the power to keep going and just keep inspiring others with our own stories. How did we do it? It doesn't mean we made it, yeah, but that we are still learning and willing to show up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and yes to all. And really, thank you, Sandra, for being with us today and for being with me and answering all those questions
Thank
on leadership. I definitely myself favor the term queer over queer leadership, but I
you.
learned along the way that actually being a great leader is an endless learning curve and nothing to do with an acquired title.
Yeah.
So thanks to everyone who joined us today as well.